Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. We have 4 playoff series to talk about, some strange happenings in these series, but we're going to start with some pre-show stuff. And just before I press the live button, Russ was talking about, and Peter mentioned as well, that the 50th anniversary of Woodstock has been canceled. And I can just remember, and I believe it was the 20th or 25th anniversry of Woodstock. Whoop. We got
I got it. Keep going.
Okay. The 25th anniversary of Woodstock. A lot of bands, a lot of good bands. I know Metallica played there, and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young played. And the Spin Doctors, who I didn't like, just because I didn't like their music.
I admit it. I liked them. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I didn't love them, but I liked them.
They committed the absolute cardinal sin. They were right before Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and maybe some of these bands didn't know what the bands were going to play, but the Spin Doctors open up with the CSNY Woodstock, the song Woodstock.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, if I was David Crosby, I would take my guitar and break it over that friggin' singer from Spin Doctors, break it over his head, because now, first of all, they did it badly. It was embarrassing how bad it was. But the thing is, they did it before the band that should have done it. So, I hated them from that point on. So anyway.
The interesting thing about this Woodstock was we kept hearing little drips and drabs like, hey, there's going to be 2 of them, one down the road from the other. And I was like, oh my God, did they ever hear of traffic? Last time, there's only one way in and out of like Yasgur's farm. It's not like, a big area. And thankfully it's just canceled. Because you know what? In the end, no one cares, because Woodstock was like the first Coachella of its type. Right. And now there's so many of these that Woodstock no longer has the allure. That's the reality.
Well, this is the thing, Peter. And these promoters, people don't learn from history. They tried to repeat Woodstock right afterward. It was called Altamont. It was a disaster. People got killed. They had the Rolling Stones had the bikers. I can't think of their name.
The Hells Angels.
Doing security.
Yeah, let's not really bring up the Hells Angels on this show, just to say.
Well, it's a reference, a historical reference.
Yeah.
Sorry,
for the whole Altamont thing was Buffalo, that's the guy.
Yeah, there's a bring. So the whole Woodstock 50 thing, which is supposed to be held out at Watkins Glen International Speedway, about 2.5 hours from you, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened with this is Watkins Glen is kind of a funny little town. Mm-hmm. It's got this massive speedway, but the town itself and the surrounding area doesn't have a ton of infrastructure.
No.
So you want to bring in people. That's great. They've got a place you can bring them in, right. But you also have to bring in a ton of infrastructure.
Right.
So what ended up happening was they applied for a permit, and they were only given one by the town for 75,000 capacity. Well, they can't make money at that.
Yeah.
And so now the investors start pulling out. The emails went out to all the bands. They get to keep some percentage of their booking deposit and stuff, but that's it. So I think the tickets were rumored to be $438 or something like that a ticket, and times 75,000. But the cost to put this stuff on is insane.
Yeah,
that's why you pull it.
Watkins Glen is built to be able to handle 100,000 people, parking and things of that nature, and it's right on a major thoroughfare on the Highway 17, or a little off of 17, which runs down the bottom of New York State. But still, if it's an event like this, whatever you think the amount is going to be, it's probably going to be double that, because everybody's going to think they can get in for free, and then it's a cluster F. So
just don't look any further than the Fire Music Festival on Netflix. Watch that documentary, and you'll see exactly what Peter's talking about, how it could become an absolute nightmare. I want to bring up the NFL draft for a minute, because it's one of only 2 drafts that you are expected to get some immediate results. The NHL, you don't expect it. You don't expect it from baseball. If you start giving me the WWE or any of these other stupid drafts, I'm not even going to comment. But the NFL, WFAN's website put out a headline that said, don't expect any of the Jets picks to have an impact this year. And I went ballistic because, for one, they picked third. So if they can't get an impact picking third in a draft, then they might as well just fold up shop and fire the GM, Mike McCagnon, now and go home. But if they can't get results from at least 2 or 3 guys out of a draft like that,
right,
we've got the wrong GM. And I don't know who greenlighted the headline. I would never even read the article past the headline because intellectually it turned me completely off. Now, if you're a fan of the NFL, the problem with the NFL is, and unfortunately, like you saw, the Giants drafted a kid, he's shot, and he's in the hospital, and I think his teammate from college died.
Yeah, he got killed.
And then that's brutal. But in a less extreme circumstance, and we've had this circumstance before in the NFL draft, you just have to hope that your draftees make it to camp without getting arrested over the summer or unfortunately killed. Like, this is where this league has come to, Peter. It's really getting – we don't ever – the worst – I'm going to give you a bad scandal that was with the NHL draft that I kept quiet on. And that was Ryan Whitney went to a strip club the night before the NHL draft. And that was like a big deal. Everybody was like, hey, don't say anything. And I was like, all right, I won't say anything. You know?
Right now, Laramie Tunsil smoking pot with the mask on is no big deal. And this is, and I've made this point before. This is why I have become completely disenchanted with the NFL over the last few years. It's a league of thugs. It's a league where the commissioner is a corrupt moron. Where honestly, there's nothing likable. They're bullies. It's just they make billions and billions of dollars, and I don't think they care anything about the fans other than what they can get out of their pockets. I hate the NFL and the way they treat their fans and the way some of their players treat the fans, but it's still popular and it still makes money. And it still gets phenomenal ratings on TV. So we're going to have to live with it. But honestly, compared to some other sports, I wouldn't want to deal with people in the NFL.
This is why the Roman Gladiators didn't have a draft, Peter, because if Maximus would have been drafted, you wouldn't see him the next year.
Yeah. I think you create a culture of barbarism.
Yes,
that starts at Pop Warner football levels and just moves through the ranks and stuff. Eventually you create barbarians, and there's no real checks and balances in society on so many fronts anymore. But you ask these guys to build their bodies out and behave like complete and utter animals.
Yeah.
Eventually it takes over all of their lives because there's no checks and balances. And football's the sport today that we talk about, but it could be in other ways too. It could be in other sports too if it's left unchecked.
And Russ, how they, like, as they're going through the draft picks and they show who's been added and who's been lost for each year for each team, like as the draft picks are going on, I noticed the Oakland Raiders, as one of their add-ons, was a guy named, and you'll know who I'm talking about, Vontaze Burfict.
Yeah.
He used to be with Cincinnati. There is no more perfect addition to a team than Burfict to the Raiders. The Raiders are a bunch of thugs and have had a reputation of being dirty for 50 years, and this guy has been suspended, 6 times?
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Well, let's even just talk a minute more about the Raiders, because if the Raiders, the way they operate right now, if they were operating like this in the NHL, I think the commissioner would have said something. So shortly before the draft, the Raiders sent home all their scouts, and they said, we're probably not inviting you to the draft. So thanks for your everything and get lost. Beat it. And so that left essentially a 2-man room with whoever else John Gruden and Mike Mayock felt like inviting. No matter what you think of these guys, they did the hard work all year.
Right.
By doing that and dismissing them and not letting them take part in this sends a bad message for John Gruden to ever get another job again. And he probably feels like, since he has a 10-year deal, he doesn't care.
Well,
but it's a terrible message to send.
Yes, but the thing is, I think the scouts are probably thankful that they were banished from the Raiders draft room, because after the Raiders took the guy that they took at number 4, who was basically their organization's version of Jeff Lageman. I mean,
If you bring up Jeff Lageman one more time, Mike, just once more.
Log them in. No, but it was an absolutely terrible pick, and it made everything that and the Giants pick made everything fall into place for other teams. This guy, like, he was supposed to be picked at the end of the first round. It was a terrible pick. But anyway, I just want to touch on this, not because I'm not discussing the episode or not discussing the phenomena. I just thought that this was hilarious. If you go out and search, hashtag Game of Thrones, there was the big episode, the battle episode last night, and I thought it was great. And I just made some generic. I wasn't going to do a LaShawn McCoy and do any spoilers. I just made some generic.
You're going to be a dick. That's
good. Right, exactly. I just said incredible or wow. It was great, but. Somebody posted a video, and I don't know where it was. I think it was Barstool Sports that posted it.
Yes,
it looked like a sports bar somewhere, and they had Game of Thrones on the screen. And when the Night King he meets his fate, and a certain character does what they do, they reacted like the Leafs had won Game 7 in Boston.
I just saw that like 10 minutes before we started. It was crazy. I mean, back in the early 90s, it was bad enough with like Melrose Mondays at bars where people would go down and watch Melrose Place, but this is getting ridiculous.
I'm a big fan of Josie Bissett.
Yeah, but I mean, people call Elvis fans and Deadheads weird. Oh yeah, sorry, Game of Thrones people. You're the new weirdos.
The Barstool Sports will not age well in 20 years. They're going to be like the old men sitting at the bar, just with their face just flat down on the bar in 20 years, and no one's going to care. So
I don't know who this jerk it was. I think his name is Portnoy. He's a Barstool Sports guy from Boston, and all he was doing was insulting Leaf fans.
That's all they do.
It's like, dude. I mean, have some couth. I mean,
couth, Mike. I mean,
okay. At least, thankfully, we're not that. No. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, April 29th, 2019.
I'm Peter Tessier in snowy Winnipeg.
That's a shame. I'm Russ Owen from Sportsology.
Not balmy.
This weather is crazy. And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Okay, let's start with the game yesterday that I thought was, the Carolina Hurricanes are sort of defying logic. Now they're up 2-0 in the best-of-7 series over the Islanders, winning 2 in that great home ice advantage known as the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, Russ. Mm-hmm. And that game, the Hurricanes only had 18 shots. They lost one of their defensemen, one of their forwards, and their starting goaltender, and still won. I don't know if this is a statement more on what the Islanders are not doing or what the Hurricanes are sort of getting away with a skeleton crew, but Russ, they're defying logic right now.
Yeah, and apparently the backup goalie was from a team called the LI 495s. Something about 495. That guy, if he had to actually take 495 to get to the game, he would never get there because that's the worst traffic zone in like the world. But anyhow, it's a Long Island Expressway. That's what the 495 is. But here's the few things that I took away from this series so far. The first one is, and we talked about this, the Barclays Center has taken away all the home ice that the Islanders had. Completely took it away. Not because there's not yelling fans there. Yelling fans is just a part of your home ice advantage.
Right.
But there is an aura about Nassau Coliseum and Long Island and everything else, the winning. It's like, it's almost like when the Yankees moved Yankee Stadium, it took them a while to re-get everything back.
Right.
At Barclays, you could put orange on your seats with shirts. You could get everybody yelling. It's not the same. And the other thing that's really crazy to me is how the media protects them by saying, oh, yeah, this is a sellout. How many empty seats do we have to see before we realize these games are not sold out?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean,
I'm not going with the obstructive view because that's the other thing. Well, they have a certain amount of obstructive view seats. We know that. It's still not even sold out.
Yeah, we're talking about seats that as they're panning around, we see empty seats. Yeah. It's like Ottawa a few years ago.
Yeah, and it's not like, a few people are in the bathroom. It's the end of the period and stuff. It's obvious, yeah.
It's obvious. So that's one thing. The other thing is when you do try and play perfect hockey, it affects your offense. It is affecting their offense more now than in the regular season because they have to play even more perfect. And you could tell that Carolina was getting to him after the first goal in this last game. Even though the Islanders did finally get on the board, they didn't have it. Now, I think they'll play better on the road. And I did pick the Islanders in this series because I didn't think this Barclays from Nassau Coliseum would be such a great drop-off, but it really isn't. The ice has something to do with it. We know all about that story. We don't have to get into that again. But the ice matters. It all matters, but both teams are playing on it. But here's the other thing that we're not used to seeing. So first game, Leonard complains about the bounce off the back wall, yada, yada, goes in the net, right? That does happen. But that was the first time we've seen Leonard sort of crack back and remind us of the old Robin Leonard. So there was that. Then after yesterday's game, Barry Trotz says, well, there was 48 seconds of good hockey out of Carolina. Like, seriously, Barry? That's where, that's where the bar is now?
Apparently, Barry, 48 seconds was enough to beat your friggin' team.
Correct. And that's my big problem here is instead of having these sound bites to fire up the team and everything else, how about you just don't say anything, Barry? Because you already have a great reputation, but you also saw he was yelling on the bench. That's something we're not accustomed to seeing Barry Trotz do.
Yeah.
So I do think there is a certain amount of pressure getting to him now that he has never felt before. Even though he's been in the Stanley Cup, he is now in a market that is really breathing down his neck and has a boss that is really breathing down his neck for wins. And I think Barry Trotz is under a lot of pressure now. I do.
Well, just to illustrate your point, and then Peter, go to you in terms of your thoughts of the series so far. On the game summary for yesterday, game 2, it has attendance at Barclays 15,795, and that is capacity for hockey. That was not a capacity. It was not a sellout. It's bull crap. And that's the thing. It's like you would have sold out every seat had you gone to Nassau. And I know that there were less seats there, but you'd have
more luxury boxes too. They have like 100
luxury boxes, but you'd have the fans basically on top of you in that building, as Jan has described. It's it's an echo chamber, and that's a home ice advantage. What this is bull crap. Go ahead.
It's just unfortunate, and fans deserve a little more in terms of that. And Lou should work his magic, and if they get a game 5, get their back there. But I mean, how do you do that now? You need to do it.
It's not happening. The NHL, the NHL has decided that the rest of the playoffs, the way it's going will be, if they get one more game at Barclays, it'll be a miracle. Are going to be at Barclays. They're not going back to Nassau.
Yeah, that's just a shame. But again, it's one of those weird things that the NHL really doesn't understand about some of its. It's part and parcel with how the NHL looks at fan experience and how it markets. It just does things weird. So there you go. I mean, as for the series, unfortunately, I haven't been able to watch a ton of games on this, but I mean, you sort of look like I 2 games. I haven't been able to watch much of theirs just due to timing, but you look at what Carolina is doing, and it's not that they're doing everything so well. They're just getting a lot of timely good things happening.
Yeah, no question. Good luck is on their side.
And that's really the difference in this. I mean, the games haven't been blowouts, they haven't been one-sided. It's just timely, and that might just be the way the series goes, that things are just going to bounce. The coin's going to flip to their head this series. It may not be 4 games, and maybe 5 games, and maybe 6, but it's just going to bounce Carolina's way, and that's just the ebb and flow of things. And maybe next round it bounces the other team's way. But that's kind of how this is going.
There is that, Peter, but you can't blame a series on that, even if it looks like it's going like that. The other factor I think that's important here is it seems like Rod Brindamore's players are going to the wall just a little bit more than the Islanders players, and that may be because they have more talent and they can do that. Yeah. And then the Islanders are running out a little bit more out of gas. But Brindamore's team, the play is very, very consistent. Well, that Islanders is almost as consistent, but a little shy of it.
I mean, that would be odd if they have more gas in the tank when they played a 7-game series and went double overtime, and the Islanders swept the Penguins and had 10 days off. I mean, the one thing that's interesting, I mean, they're dropping, the Carolina players are dropping like flies. Yesterday, they lost Van Riemsdyk probably for at least 4 to 6 weeks with a separated shoulder. They're doing an MRI today. Manalainen, and the guy that you've mentioned a couple times, Russ, he's out with a hand injury. He had hand surgery today. Mrazek is day to day. They may get Furland back, Svechnikov back, Martinuk back. And I just looked at the schedule. I thought they were playing on Tuesday. This could be a blessing in disguise for maybe both teams. They're not playing until Wednesday, so they have 2 full days off.
Yeah, that's a lot of time. I think the Islanders can certainly regroup from that. I think they need to sort of make some lineup changes. I think you might want to put Michael Del Cole in now. I think a bigger body with some good hands around the net, you might get some goals. You might. I mean, they need to get goals from somewhere. So this is just like the same as, what we said about Babcock. Trotz has a chance here to try and, change the fortunes. And I think they have a good chance of winning the next game because they, lost both at home. They're going to put it to the wall.
Yeah, well, and the one thing here is, I mean, Carolina's at a little bit of a disadvantage because their AHL team made the second round of the playoffs, but they don't start their series until Friday. With all the injuries, if they don't want to rush some of these players back or they don't think they're ready, they can call up guys on emergency recall. Like Martin Neckish if they want to, or Nicolas Roy, or the kid Podolarski, I think he's from Western New York. He had 9 points in 4 games for the Charlotte Checkers. They're going to have to call Nedeljkovic up from Charlotte because Mrazek is not going to be able to play. So
Nedeljkovic's really good. I mean, we don't know what will happen if they had to throw him in, but he can be really good. The interesting thing is, if I were Carolina, I might have just shorted myself a forward and brought up Jake Bean.
Well, they might because Van Riemsdyk's going to be out there, probably going to insert Fleury. So, or they,
I would insert Jake Bean before Fleury. I mean, I get wanting to have the size there, but the pace of this series, you put Jake Bean in there, you might get an extra 2 points in a game that you weren't expecting.
Yeah, I mean, you could protect them on the bottom pairing. They may very well do that. Okay, just jump into here. So that Peter, you said there was some Preds news.
So just an interesting thing, and it's sort of more. It's news that just kind of came out for kind of the wrong reasons. And what has happened is the Preds have a job positioning opening, and I'll read you the required skill: experience with SQL, R, Python, or other statistical programming language, experience with modeling techniques, including regression analysis and modeling, data visualization, software experience, preferably Tableau, intermediate expertise in Microsoft Excel, excellent analytical skills, attention to detail, and ability to work independently with data to provide relevant analysis, ability to prioritize and manage multiple projects and support multiple departments within the hockey operations. Preds are going in.
They're going into analytics, baby.
And guess what? That's an intern position. No pay.
Oh, wow.
Maybe my buddy Jeff from Toronto did that job.
The position will work with hockey operations, assist the hockey operations department gathering data.
About that.
General admin work is required to assist with other projects. Position is based in Nashville. Candidate must have living arrangements and reliable transportation. Candidates must receive credit applying directly towards graduation from a credit college university. Ability to work extended days, hours, evenings, weekends, and holidays during the hockey season.
For free.
During the hockey season, must be able to work all game nights, must be detail-oriented, must be effective communicator. As a condition of internship, qualified applicants will be subject to a background check.
They're not even giving you any hot chicken. Come on. Jesus,
you signed Kyle Turris to $6 million, and you're not going to pay that guy to keep you out of that problem. That's what the problem is. The $100,000 you'd spend on that person, if you believe in it, would have saved you $36 million.
And
that's not a bad return on investment.
Go to the opposite end of the spectrum, Peter. I can't remember where it was mentioned, but it was mentioned a couple of weeks ago that they foresee the Leafs spending up to $50 million on analytics over the next few years. That they're going to invest that much in analytics. So, I mean, I think the Preds are being dragged kicking and screaming into this because I don't think we don't believe in it.
so we're not going to pay for it, but we want all the bells, whistles, and perks that come with it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the case. I think this is like a trial run. That's what I think.
But we want Tony Stark to come in, but we don't want to pay him anything because
that's fair. I mean, I can't defend that. I
can defend not wanting to do it, but I can defend that. I can't defend asking for all that expertise and not spending money.
And I was joking, but my friend Jeff Violette, Jeffler, or now it's just Jeff Violette on Twitter. He's into analytics.
And he got a real name.
No, he's always had a real name. But anyway, he he's looking to get into the analytics game. That would be an opportunity for somebody like him that he might even take it. Now, he'd like to get paid, but there are people out there, so maybe they're looking for that kind of avenue. And but honestly, I think you're going to get better results if you actually paid for them rather than try to get it on an entry level, or get it in exchange for some S&H green stamps or something like that. So
yeah, throw a pair of season tickets in it for the family, maybe. Make it something. Good grief.
Anyway, Russ, you said there was some Sabres news. I know that John Shannon reported this morning about Todd Richards, the Tampa assistant, being part of the ever-growing list of Sabres head coaching candidates.
Well, I think it would be interesting if they brought in Todd Richards. He's had a little bit of a go, and I think he I think he's a decent hockey mind. I do. I think there's a dual benefit though by bringing in Todd Richards, because during the Frozen Four on Minnesota Duluth is Justin Richards, his son. And so, of course, Ken Campbell asks him to talk about his dad and critique him. And Justin's like, well, I'm not going to say anything bad. So, what? And I don't blame him. And Scott Sandelin rolled his eyes, and it was funny. But Justin Richards can play. That's what's not funny. And he is a center. And he had 12 goals this year. He had 32 points. I really like this play. I liked him on faceoffs. So you get the dad, you could sign the kid too. That's not bad. I mean, that's actually a pretty good way to start. I think that's the way the Sabres do need to go too. I think, Tampa's been successful. Yeah. I think, they got to try and work off somebody else's success. I think.
Well, the list right now in terms of people that they've actually talked to or people they're actually considering. One is Chris Taylor, their AHL coach in Rochester. Jacques Martin, which is a member of the Pittsburgh chain because he's an assistant under Sullivan. Ricard Gronborg from the Swedish national program. And now Richards. There has been some whispers about Adam Oates, and also last Friday, Elliot Friedman mentioned Sheldon Keefe, who
Jacques Martin is in that mix too.
Yeah, Martin was the Pittsburgh connection. Yeah, but
okay.
Keefe is interesting, but I tend to believe, and maybe I'll be wrong on this if he takes a job. I think Keefe is going to stay in Toronto and get paid as an AHL coach and be the guy in waiting for when Babcock finally either departs or gets fired. And that could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be 4 years, but he'd be making good money in the American Hockey League, and we know the connection between him and Dubas. I think it's only a matter of time that happens. So why would you go out and take another job?
If I'm Pagula, I tell Keefe to name his price just so I could throw it at the Leafs.
And it won't matter.
Point.
It won't matter. I mean,
you don't know that. I mean, everybody's got a price, Mike. You don't know what his price might be.
If they're throwing $50 million at analytics, they'll throw a couple $1 million at Sheldon Keefe. I think that's a problem.
Listen, you could say that, but you never know when someone has a price. But I'm just saying, from a rallying point for the Sabres, that would be a heck of a get for them, and it would increase that rivalry that exists over the bridge. That's all I'm saying.
Well, maybe they'll make a bid on Babcock if and when he gets fired. Okay, so going back to some of the series, Columbus and Boston. Russ, I look at this series. I look at that series through two games from the perspective of the Leafs, and I say to myself, there is what there's how you beat Boston.
Mhm.
You had a Columbus team that's big.
Yep.
That's got guys like Anderson who beat you into submission, in terms of checking you against the boards, that don't back down. They've got veteran guys, like Dubinsky and Boone Jenner, and they have skill like Panarin and leadership like Foligno and Atkinson, and good defense and a great goaltender who's finally starting to do something in the playoffs. And it's 1-1 going back to Columbus. And they went a 3-2 a double overtime victory in game 2. And as that game went along more and more, I thought Columbus took over, except for a few opportunities when Bobrovsky made incredible saves. But that's the way you beat Boston. And by watching what Columbus has done, it shows how far Toronto is from being able to beat a team like Boston.
Yeah, I think all that's fair. I think a few things that really stood out to me is, Grzelcyk scored a nice goal, but he also had his nose bleeding from like both nostrils.
Yeah,
Tortorella was over in a heap in the corner. Like, this is a series with that guys are getting beat up, and Boston, like you said, went through a tough series already. This is now going to be another tough series.
right.
Boston's still not getting enough secondary scoring. They're not, and you know what's funny? Their top line's not scoring enough either.
Right.
I mean, that's so it's like, yes, you have who they trade for. Charlie
Coyle and Johansson.
He's doing great. Johansson's doing great. Your top line's not doing great, and you've got a few other players. Panarin's outplaying everybody on the Boston Bruins. Now, I can't blame Tuukka Rask, right? That goal that Panarin scored was out of the world. Like, to even think you could score that goal takes a lot of balls. I don't know how he even got that to go in, but he did, right? And that's what Panarin can do. They're playing with a lot of confidence. The way I see this matchup right now, Columbus's PK is beating the Bruins power play. The Bruins power play has been pretty bad.
Yeah.
And in playoffs, special teams matter. Bruins have to get better at their power play, and maybe they need to change it around. Maybe Pasternak needs to get moved to the second power play till he gets hot again. Maybe you need to move up some other guys. They've got to do some juggling on the power play.
And their power play was a difference against Toronto. They scored twice in games. I think it was twice in game 4 or games. It was twice in game 6, and that put Toronto behind the 8 ball. They couldn't come back from it. But Peter, what I noticed, and Russ was talking about Grzelcyk, he got pancaked behind the boards by one of the big Columbus forwards. He just got run at. And that's what they're doing. They're beating Boston at their own game. They're laying the body. They're being physical. And Boston, coming off a 7-game series where Toronto is not as physical, but they did hit them.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we sort of forget about John Tortorella is that he does have a way of winding his guys up in the right way, and he's had success doing that in the playoffs. And Tortorella sticks to his tactics. He develops it, he sticks to it, and he believes in it wholeheartedly. And if this team's buying into what he's selling, and he's going to use them that way to go beat a team that just went 7 games and they've had a week off, it's kind of brilliant. And at least they're buying into it, and he's got them wound up the right way. And I mean, when I say wound up, I mean he's triggering them to do what needs to be done, and they're believing in what he's doing. He's getting into their heads, and he's getting them doing the right things. And the right things may not be what everyone wants to see a team do. It's the right things that help you win the game against that opposition.
Yeah.
And that's what's really impressive about it.
Yeah. I'll tell you that there's a few things that Torts is definitely doing right. I mean, clearly Bob is playing great. I mean, this is, what we always knew he could do. And now that he's actually in the next round of the playoffs, he's doing it.
Right.
So that's a pretty big deal. People don't want to give Columbus credit for a lot of things, but even just bringing up Texier, he's had a big difference just in the way he skates and brings the puck out of the zone. It's another guy. Brendan Dubinsky is out Marchanding Brad Marchand.
Yeah,
and being a jerk and in post-game remarks, like
and they drew Marchand into a retaliatory penalty at the first period. I mean, that's the thing. The Leafs couldn't get underneath his skin because he's as much of a loose cannon as Kadri is. It's just he has a little bit more self-control where he doesn't take a stupid suspension, but he's done that in the past.
Yeah,
he's been able to get underneath his skin wearing blue and white, at least Toronto blue.
But but Dubinsky had a great remark. He was asked something at the end of the game, and he goes, "You thought this was loud? Wait till we go back to Columbus. This was nothing."
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff irks fans. It irks the other team a little bit when they hear it. Dubinsky knows how to be a jerk. Like he's been working his whole life.
Yeah.
No, I mean, nobody has.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
And you know what the funny thing is? You look at Columbus's defense right now, and you've got the two big horses in Werenski and Seth Jones. You've got Savard playing big minutes. The rest of their defense, Dean Kukin, Scott Harrington, they're playing well on their bottom pairing. They're doing this without Ryan Murray in the lineup. I mean, you know,
this is what you need is guys to just play to not be a hindrance, right? You don't have to be amazing and be that breakout player that shines in the playoffs. You just have the best thing you can ever be in the playoffs if you're a bottom pair is just no one talks about you. Then you're really doing your job.
Now, the series, again, it must be something about Dallas because I watched barely any of the Nashville-Dallas series, and now it's Nashville-St. Louis, and of the 4 series, that's the one I've watched the least. I caught a little bit of their 4-2 win.
You mean Dallas, St. Louis? You said Nashville, St. Louis.
No, Dallas, St. Louis. No, I was saying Nashville, and Dallas, the first round.
Oh, okay.
I did. That was the first round series I watched the least, and now it's Dallas, St. Louis, and it must be something with Dallas because that of the 4 series that are going on right now, that's the one I've watched the least. Now they came back.
I think it's a good series. I've been watching it.
Right, they came back after losing in game 1. They went 4-2 in game 2, and I mean, I have to say, I thought St. Louis was going to win this series, but Dallas seems to may have what it takes to beat St. Louis because they're very similar. But it's just weird, Russ, is that Dallas now is a defense-first team when this team couldn't play defense to worth its life when Ken Hitchcock was there.
I mean, again, because Ken Hitchcock is antiquated in the way he does things. I mean, Montgomery is completely different. He lets guys be more responsible. He doesn't try and crack the whip as much as Hitchcock. He's a little bit more forgiving on certain plays. And you're getting the best, out of Heiskanen. You're getting the best out of Lindell. You're getting the best out of all those guys.
Rupe Hintz.
Yeah, Rupe Hintz is a great example because he got sent up and down when Ken Hitchcock was there. Right. Hitchcock didn't really even want to use him. So it just shows you that no matter who the coach is, no matter how good your track record is, no matter how good you were in the past, if you don't change with the times, this is where we have to give Torts some credit, then this is what happens. The next guy who takes over makes you look bad with mainly the same players. And that's simply because of style and management style and the way a guy coaches. So right now things are going great. Ben Bishop being healthy really helps, though. I mean, we have to be fair about that.
That's true. Now, Peter, I don't know how much of this series you've caught, but I mean, like I said, I picked St. Louis in 6. I thought St. Louis after the first round, after seeing what they did to Winnipeg, I thought that they would at least make the Western Conference Final. Now, I'm not saying that Dallas is going to win the series, but it's a lot more even than I thought it was going to.
Oh, I think so. Going into this series, I thought it was going to be a much more even series than what either the Blues or the Stars face in the first round. I think they're sort of well suited to kind of go back and forth with each other. Similarly backstopped by great goaltending. A good top line. I think St. Louis is maybe a little more well-rounded team, but they are kind of similar. I think this is the one that's going to come down to the goals surrendered, not really the goals scored, so to speak. I think it's going to be like what team allows the best scoring chances and goals to go in as opposed to who actually creates something. It's kind of a different way of looking at it, but that's so far what I've seen. Unfortunately, like most series, I just haven't had a chance because I've been really busy with some work projects the last week where I've been out of the house for a bit. So I haven't seen a ton of it and catching up on highlights, but I think there's potential for this series to tighten up really quick too. And then it could become a which goalie blinks kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't discount what you say. I think you make a lot of sense, Peter. The one thing I'll add and build on is, and I've seen a lot of this on Twitter at least once or twice, where I'm hearing the words, well, Jordan Binnington has been average, but it doesn't matter. And it's like, hold on. Just because his save percentage may be average to what's going on in the playoffs, if you do watch the games, his leg extension and his reflexes on shots down low have been out of this world. And it's all about making the right saves at the right time. And Binnington has been that guy. Actually, Matt Murray used to do that a lot more. Didn't do it as much this year. Binnington's doing that. And so maybe the save percentage isn't going to be to your liking. Maybe the heat map isn't going to tell the whole story. But that's really what he's doing out there. And that is a big thing because it's kind of funny. I think it's working in reverse now for Binnington because now that the Blues are playing better, he's getting less credit again, where he got all the credit for getting them in. But now, like, Tarasenko's scoring and everybody looks good. Bouwmeester looks good. Right. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, Binnington's okay. And it's like, well, hold on. He's the biggest reason they even got there. But if you do watch the game closely, he will make the important saves at the important times. And that's really been the difference. Otherwise, it is that close.
The guy was nominated for the Calder, and he was called up in January. So I think his play has something to do with their success.
No, but right. I mean, Peter, am I wrong? Are you not seeing the same thing?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. I am. Yeah, and it's just it's a little bit of silliness. But, yeah, this is going to be a good, long series, and I expect that, and it's fun. St. Louis is the one team, too, you know, that are probably getting marginalized the most because, look, they've never won the Stanley Cup. I get it. This could be their year. It really could be.
Well, okay. The
final.
final.
Mike just discounted it because he's like, no.
The final of the 4 series is San Jose, Colorado. I thought San Jose in the first game pretty much dominated the Avs. Avs bounced back. Now, I saw some of this game yesterday, and it was a sort of furious comeback by the Sharks. They scored a goal late in the third and fell short 4-3. Peter, I don't know what to think of the Avs. That number 1 line is immensely talented.
Oh,
I mean, really
6 straight games or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's there, and that's the thing. It's like it's sort of like Marchand, Pasternak, and Bergeron. They're almost impossible to control. If you can, you're going to win the game. But they're better than the Boston line for one. They're bigger, they're faster, and they're younger. And it's, I mean, if San Jose can keep them in check, then I think they'll win this series. But when they put their mind to it, they're impossible.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I honestly think Nathan McKinnon is the best player in the NHL, given the way.
And he's making less than $7 million, folks.
Yeah, but not for long.
No. I think he's got 2 or 3 more years left in that contract.
I haven't looked. I think it's 2.
Yeah, I mean,
but if he keeps up this pace, he's getting McDavid money, maybe more.
He might get more.
He might get one. He's that good. I mean, who was I chatting with about this? Maybe it was on here, but one thing about like McDavid, the difference between McDavid and McKinnon is this. McDavid will go around you so fast you don't know what's going up. Right. McKinnon will go through you so fast. That's basically the difference as far as I can see. It's just unbelievable. And, you're right, Mike. That top line is so utterly dangerous,
right,
in so many capacities. It's frightening. It's absolutely frightening. And they might just add Jack Hughes. No, they won't add Jack Hughes. Thank God. I forgot. See, I'm getting all mixed up. I've been hibernating. But what did you guys see the non-icing call?
Yeah.
Wait, what call?
The non-icing call.
Yes, I did see that. That was baloney. And here's the difference between the regular season and the playoffs. That would have been whistled in the regular season.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden in the playoffs, they let them race for it again till the last second. What's happening?
Has there been?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Has there been a playoffs in recent memory where the officiating has been this bad and we're not even through the first round?
Oh, I know. It's brutal.
I can think of instances where it's been bad in little spots, but not in general as bad as it's been. And this is what I've noticed. And I can't stand this because the rule used to be if a puck is dumped and a player is on the other side of the red line and the puck is within reach, then it's not an icing because he has the option to touch it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's iced from the opposite side of the red line and the player lets the puck go by, they blow it. They blow it for icing. That's not icing, unless they change the rule.
Well,
If a defenseman lets the puck go by him, it's not like it was going 100 miles an hour. He just lets it go by and then like slowly skates back, looking like he's trying to go fast, and he's not really.
On this one, the team that iced the puck got the goal because the other team sort of let up for a second because they thought they were going to get a whistle, and there was no whistle.
Yeah, I mean, Brent Burns had a phenomenal game in game one. I think it was 4 points. He had another great game yesterday. But I mean, San Jose, if they can't keep that line under control, this is going to be a long.
It's hard. I mean, they're not going to be able to keep them under control every game.
No,
this is just one of those games where Colorado just late was too much for him. Jones played well all game, but it's just if that line heats up, it's very hard to stop.
Yeah.
So there's going to be those moments. I will tell you, there was a gutsy moment with Matt Calvert because Burns creamed him. I think it was Burns who did it. And did it in a way that was similar to Voracek. And Bill C., don't start with the whole pointing out the nuances and everything else. There is a similarity there. It's not the exact same hit. Got it. But the idea is he barely could get up to get to his knees. And he got up and he passed the puck to McKinnon. McKinnon gets the extra and gets the empty net goal. And he is like barely getting off the ice. And the team just rallies around him. Like they were like, oh my God, what a play. And those kinds of plays are why they went and got a guy like Matt Calvert. Those
inspiring.
Yeah, that was a big deal. Like that was something where that game, and it did get close too, right? Another goal went up. That was a big play.
Yeah, and the inspiring thing for San Jose may be whether they get Pavelski back for Game 3. I mean, they say he's not. They say it was a day-to-day thing after the scary incident in Game 7. So they he missed the first 2 games. So we'll see if he comes back for Game 3. Now, Peter, you mentioned McDavid, and I have to go down this road because I was just so annoyed with when the announcement for the Hart was made over the weekend, and it's Crosby. Okay, obviously. Kucherov, who's likely to be the winner, and McDavid. How in good God's name can you nominate Connor McDavid? I freely admit he's the best player in the league, but that is not that is not the reason the Hart Trophy is given out. The definition is player judged most valuable to his team. Well, if his team was a playoff team, then he should be nominated. His team was out of the playoffs in February. There's no way that Connor McDavid, as great as he is, should have been nominated for the Hart. No way.
I'll say this. I vote, right? And I'll tell you who I voted. And I let people know online that this was a very contentious vote. And every year now, the Hart gets worse and worse because 5 slots are not enough. There could be 7 easily because Gaudreau and Kane deserve to be in there, but we can only fill in 5 slots, right? And I remember I had crossouts on my list here, but I went Kucherov first, Ovechkin second. I mean, Ovechkin was an afterthought. I mean, that's a pretty big afterthought. Marchand was an afterthought. He's third on my list. Crosby's fourth and McDavid's fifth. I freely admit, I thought about Patrick Kane. I thought about Gaudreau, but all these other guys had other things. But people were killing Crosby, right, because they just want to kill him. And Greg Wyshynski had a very good line. He said, he was 18 points ahead of the next guy scoring on that team. Because I basically said, hey, Crosby didn't have anybody to play with this year. Right. I don't know if you looked at that team, but he really
that's like Taylor Hall last year. The next player on the Devils last year had something that was 40 points behind Hall in scoring.
And they made the playoffs.
Yeah. I think the idea of I think the playoffs has to be a part of the conversation in how you measure it. How much you weight it is going to be a very debatable thing, but it needs to be weighted in that conversation or logic of arriving there. Like where would the Oilers have been without McDavid? Like would they have been even more worse?
Yeah, 31st place.
Yeah.
There's
But where were they with him?
Right, Peter, there's a very famous thing. Ralph Kiner walked in to get a raise one year in Major League Baseball. He led the league in home runs. I think he was with Pittsburgh at the time. The GM looked at him and said, "We'll be in last place with you. We'll be in last place without you. No raise."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Edmonton finished 25th, 79 points.
Yeah.
Okay. So does McDavid make up the 15-point difference between them and the Ottawa Senators? Probably. But you know what that means? You're still not in.
Yeah.
Still not a playoff team. You're still not a good organization.
And that's why I put him 5th. Clearly, people had him higher because he got into the top 3. Again, I don't see how. I get that. I'm not backing that part at all. That is a big reason why I put him 5th. And why I put Crosby 4th, because I really didn't think they were going to get in the top 3, but I thought they deserved to be recognized at least for their accomplishments. I'd like to know from the votes, and I guess we'll see what happens, like how many had Marchand in, like I did.
Yeah.
Put biases aside, put aside the fact that he is a jerk, but also note that he had an amazing season.
He had 100 points.
Yeah. People don't want to even admit that.
Yeah, no, I mean, don't get me wrong. I respect Brad Marchand. He's a great player. He's annoying as all hell. You'd like to see somebody splatter him against the wall every once in a while.
Yeah.
But he's great.
He is great.
Now,
So,
you wanted to bring up Jack Hughes, Russ?
I did, because
And we'll take a couple questions after that.
Yeah, even as recently as a couple weeks ago, I still have people asking me about Jack Hughes and should he be the number 1 overall pick and all that stuff. And let's be real about this. If he was 6'1" or 6 foot or even 5'10" and he was 185 pounds, no one would ask me that question.
Sure.
But because he's not, the question gets asked, right? So he goes in the under 18s, and essentially, aside from a few players like Kako, who's playing in the World Championships, mostly the best talent in their age group, and he breaks Alex Ovechkin's record for point scoring in the tournament. So he breaks that record. He shatters Kane's record. He's got more points than Matthews, too, I believe, in the NTDP. And people are still shocked when they say, "You think he's generational, Russ?" And it's like, yes, he is a generational player. I do believe that. I don't know if he'll be a generational player his first year because he might need to get stronger. But the idea is, I do think down the line, as the league keeps going in the direction that they're going with, and that's something that I think is very important to look at. Don't look at what the league is today. Look at what Jack Hughes will be in this league in 2 or 3 years when this league is even faster and less physical. I think that's what sort of gets overlooked, but it just drives me crazy that in plain sight, this guy could have all these records and nobody is going to look at the fact that you can't envision him skating around people. You can't envision him getting a load of power play points. You can't envision his playmaking. You don't envision any of this stuff.
How much more evidence do you need than what Pettersson did this year that a guy who's 155 pounds soaking wet can be an assassin?
Yeah.
Mitch Marner is not a remarkably fast skater. He's elusive. He's got great vision. He's 6 foot, 170 pounds. And I doubt whether he's 6 foot. I think he's probably 5'10" or 5'11", and they're rounding up. But he's dominant at times.
Yeah.
A guy who's 5'9" and 170 pounds can be a dominating player.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, and again, it drives me a little crazy because he's really showing it. He's showing it at every level. I think he's going to the World Championships too to play with Quinn. So, that's something where Canucks fans, maybe you're hoping your team will try and trade up to get him. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And to get him means you go into a rebuild again, or you officially admit you're rebuilding to have 2 brothers come in with nothing else around them.
Right. Because that's what would happen. I also want to mention there's another thing that keeps making me laugh. And that is, I don't know how many goals Cole Caulfield ended up with, 12, 14. It was an insane amount, right? I wrote about him 2 months ago, and I thought he could be a top 10 guy when nobody was saying he could be a top 10 guy. And yet the Flyers pick 11th, and Flyers fans think that he'll just magically drop to them. And that may have been the thinking 3 months ago. That is no longer the thinking. If you want to go up and get him, you're going to have to pay dearly just to find where he's going to be on the board. So let's say what is Detroit, like 6th, right?
Yeah.
Let's say he gets past 6th. Is Edmonton 7? It might be. There's some 7 or 8, whatever. That's where you have to call that team if you're the Flyers and find out what it takes to get that pick. And that team knows who you want, right? So you're going to have to give up something great. You're going to have to give up maybe Isaac Ratcliffe, who's lighting it up now for Guelph, and, swap your first-round pick and give him either a first next year or a second this year, something like that, or another prospect. You're going to have to trade dearly if you want to get this guy. And I'm not saying the Flyers won't do that, but I'm just saying the fans have to look at this and realize this guy's not dropping to them.
Yeah. The other thing about like thinking about those kind of expenses and stuff, if you're willing to pay all that, other picks and things like that, what does that say to your scouting department? And what does it say about yourself and what you developed as a scouting department, that you're willing to throw their work away because you can't get as good at what that is, or you can't build something with what they're going to do? There's another side to this too, that you need to, like, if you're willing to take these kinds of risks, particularly when you're, depending on your team, you also have to look at and say, well, why am I in this position where I need to take that kind of risk to get this player?
Yeah.
Like, you've got to think about it too.
Yeah, I think. And so Edmonton is picking 8th, and so I think Edmonton would take them. So I think 7 is the slot. And I'm trying to look it up, see who's picking 7th. Excuse me.
7th is Buffalo. And I have heard, and they have a history. Botterill has a history of taking U.S. guys.
Yeah, so maybe Buffalo is the team you trade with. All right, we're gonna take some questions. Let's see what we got. Let's see what you got, chat room. We were questioning highways before, which is the worst. They all were New York. Schuylkill's pretty bad too, though. I will tell people that. Let's see.
What, they're questioning my memory of Highway 17, or?
No. They didn't even bring that up at all. They were questioning your revisionist history, though, on the Islanders now, because you're saying that maybe they could get swept, and you were pretty pro Islander before that, so they were mocking you a little for that, Mike.
Well. Maybe Thomas Grice has to come in and save me.
Lance Norman asked, "Hey Russ, question for you: do you think Philly should have kept Mrazek and given him some time, or do you think they did the right thing walking away? Also, is the team in front of him that made him bounce back?" I think it was all those things. I think the tremendous amount of pressure that you face when you're a goalie in Philly. I think the expectations that you face when you're a goalie in Philly. I think the guys who were in front of him, because they do give up a lot of shots, I think all of that didn't work in his favor. He never looked comfortable. So it was never going to work. I just think it was one of those situations where it was just never going to work out.
And I have to point out that how many teams in this playoff right now have ridiculously deep and talented blue lines? St. Louis, San Jose, Carolina. I mean, the team, Boston, Columbus. These are the teams. I mean, you cannot dispute that having depth on defense is a factor right now in these playoffs. I mean, you can even say Dallas with Klingberg and Heiskanen. So,
goalie FP or Frank, as he's known, asked if I thought Hintz could score 30 in the future. I always thought he was about a 25 goal guy, so I think 30 is maybe not out of the possibility. You put him with the right guy. It's just a good story, and I'm glad to see him doing that well. But he's still going to have to prove it starting flat-footed in a regular season. That always is something that's interesting. Let's see. Oh, Mike, you know what it was about Mrazek? It was more like you weren't giving Mrazek credit, and now maybe they could sweep the Islanders. So
we both weren't, because Mrazek didn't play great in games. Didn't play great in the Capital series. They won, I think, in spite of him. I mean, how many times can a goaltender get knocked on his ass in Game 7? By opposing forwards? It was like he was trying to be a blocker, and it was like watching The Longest Yard and watching Paul Crewe get knocked on his butt. I mean,
here's something else. I don't want to be the defender of Sidney Crosby, and this is something that Frank mentioned. He said, "I don't think Crosby is as dominant as he used to be." What else does this guy have to do?
Getting older.
But I mean, go look at what he does. It's not just about the numbers.
He scored 100 points this year.
It's also about faceoffs. It's also about zone possession. It's also about making plays at the right time. He does a lot, guys. I mean,
how the guy's won 3 Stanley Cups, 2 gold medals. He's won scoring titles. He's won Hart trophies. How much more does the guy have to do?
it really is. It really is. Okay. So Esmir goes, isn't getting Cole Caulfield still risky because he's getting those numbers largely because of Hughes? He's really not. If you go look, he might be benefiting from Jack Hughes right this minute, but his shot is his shot, and he will benefit from anybody he plays with. And there are times where he makes Jack Hughes better. But if you go back and look into his, and this is something I did for DeBrincat, and I remember showing Mike this, how at every level, Alex DeBrincat was just scoring goals. Like, it didn't matter. So as an example, even if you go back to when he was in high school, Caulfield had 25 goals in 23 games. I don't think Jack Hughes was there for that. Then if you go into, he played for Team Wisconsin, like under 14, he had 23 goals. He played for Stevens Point Area High School his second year. He had 50 goals in 22 games. Again, I don't think it had anything to do with Jack Hughes. And that's the same thing. Go look at DeBrincat. Every year, DeBrincat just kept getting more goals and more goals if he stayed at the same level. At some point, you have to just say, this guy has an elite shot, and he is going to score no matter where he is.
Scoring machine. Just to finish. Well, go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say about Crosby. I mean, look at the regular season. Crosby's an old man compared to who he's surrounded by.
Yeah.
Kucherov, McDavid. Well, Kane's a little bit older, but Draisaitl, Marchand, McKinnon, Gaudreau, Barkov, Marner, Stamkos. Well, he's an old guy too, but in comparison, he still had 30. He still had 100 points. He was tied with Marchand. There were only 4 guys ahead of him. Like, yeah, what more does he have to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Kyle had a real good question. There's 2 more real good questions. Kyle said, if you're the Flyers, is it worth it to trade what you said for the pick this year to get Caulfield? The answer is yes, because the Flyers can market the hell out of him. He maybe won't play with them right away, but that's okay. But they are looking for goal scoring. Chuck Fletcher said that on the Stick to Hockey podcast that I did when we had him one-on-one. And there is no better goal scorer in this draft. So it would be a way for Chuck Fletcher to say to the Flyers fans, we want a goal scorer and we got it. So I do think that, yes, I would pay a lot to do it. And even if a lot means one of your good young defensemen, even if it means, Gostisbehere, I might do it to move up to do this because, again, goal scoring is at a premium in this league. We could count on what? Are there 10 really great goal scorers in this league?
Yeah.
Is that about right?
Yeah, a dozen.
Yeah, a dozen. I mean, every team doesn't have a great goal scorer. Can we agree on that?
No, and it almost as valuable as they are the guys who are the playmakers who get them the opportunities to score.
Yeah.
So that's why I mentioned on the weekend some speculation about Marner, and we're not going to go on and on about this because we're about to end the show. But I find it very interesting. I think it's going to be the most interesting thing in the summer, and it's not just limited to the Leafs.
Marner offer sheet. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's not just limited to the Leafs. It's the Jets. It's the Lightning. There are a few other teams. How these things unfold with the decisions that Cheveldayoff, that Julian Brisebois, that Dubas have to make with all these players, with all these restricted free agents, to me is the most fascinating story of the offseason, Peter. And I just, using Winnipeg, Trouba and Myers and Connor and Laine. It's just like, what will they do? And I think you're going to see the big possibility of a lot of trades and a lot of movement this summer.
Yeah, I think I really do think we are setting up for a lot of fun this offseason. I think UFA Day is going to be very interesting. I think there's some key UFAs out there that are going to be fascinating. You've got Carlson, you've got Eberle, you've got
Gardner and Myers on defense.
Myers on defense. You've got Duchesne.
Yeah.
You've got there's
Kevin Hayes. Yeah,
Kevin Hayes. You've got there's a few things. And there are some teams who have cap space and are looking to buck the trend.
Yep.
And I would suspect a team like Philadelphia is going to be aggressive. I expect a team like Vancouver is going to be aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
Edmonton is going to have to do something Like the status quo in Edmonton isn't going to cut it. They're going to have to do something aggressive and bold moves, as Craig McTavish said. How long ago was that? And you know, there's a lot, and I think LA is going to be a little bit aggressive. And
well, actually, speaking of LA, speaking of being aggressive, like this is where sometimes we don't get.
And what's going to happen in Tampa?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because Chris Johnston from Sportsnet did the Dangle podcast on Friday or Thursday, and it was really enlightening in terms of what he was talking about in terms of Marner and a few other things. Point is probably going to take the same type of deal that Kucherov and Stamkos will take because they love it in Tampa. They love the weather. They love the no state tax. So he's not going to break the bank. He's not going to get $11 million. He's probably going to get, 8.5 to 9 and be very happy with it. But I mean, there are other scenarios out there. He talked about with Toronto. He talked about the fact that there was a deal that almost happened where they were going to go out and acquire a big defenseman at the deadline. Couldn't make it work, that they might approach it again in the summer. And it was a big priced, major name, right-hand shot defenseman. And the only guys that I think fit that were potentially able to be traded at that point, it wasn't Subban. He said it wasn't Subban. The two names that I came up based on his description were Doughty, and there were rumors about Doughty and Trouba. And so, I mean, if Toronto addresses that again, knowing what happened in this season, they have a boatload of extra forwards, and they have to clear space. That's one of many possibilities in terms of deals.
All right, so here's some interesting things. So, and then I'll ask one last question that's up there that I really like, but news out of Russia. So I did get word earlier that Nikolai Prokhorkin, who is a center,
right,
thinking about coming over to the U.S. He's not on the World Championship team, so it's the guys who were getting snubbed on the World Championship team. A lot of them are talking about coming over now. He's one of them. He's a center for the Kings. He's a point a game in the KHL. That could help the Kings.
Or they're snubbed because they've let it be known that they're already coming over to North America.
Right. The other one, Kravtsov, is coming. Like he's left Tractor. Tractor said goodbye, so he's officially coming. Sheshyorkin says he's coming in June, so that's good news for Ranger fans because that means they'll get their backup goalie. Georgiev, I would expect to get moved. I think they've been showcasing him for.
Yeah, I think you're right because I mean, honestly, what he did in the last part of the season, there are teams out there that need number ones, and you might
be able to turn him into that.
Yep.
The tough one here is with the Islanders. Sorokin said he's thinking about it, and he knows that Sheshyorkin has made the decision. He hasn't made it. I'll give you what I think the translation is for that. Sheshyorkin was the number one goalie in the KHL. Sorokin's the number two. He might want to be the big fish there for another year or two. He also doesn't know what Robin Leonard's contract status is.
There you go. Or he's waiting to see, are you going to re-sign Leonard? Because I'm not coming over to North America to be his backup.
He is evaluating everything and will make a decision soon.
Or to play in Bridgeport for a year while Grace's contract expires.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one too. And there's more. There's guys getting scouted in Russia right now that, Mike we've been sending back messages. So
Yellison, the defenseman from Lokomotiv, is likely to sign with Calgary. There's been a lot of talk about I think his name was Mikhailov, forward who the Leafs were really in on.
The Leafs and a couple of teams have been scouting him. That's what we found out.
Yeah, and then if you put two and two together, and I'm sure this is going to happen with the Jets too, and we'll end after this with the squeeze on salaries with new contracts for guys like Kyle Connor and Line. You're going to be looking for those $925,000 entry-level contracts, not guys who are 19 or 20 that may not be ready for the NHL. This Mikhailov is 24 years old. He led Omsk in scoring. He can step right in potentially in the NHL as a third or fourth liner, and he's cheap. The cheaper, you're gonna see these teams that are tight up against the cap. You're gonna see more $700,000, $800,000, $925,000 contracts being pushed into the league because they simply, especially with the Leafs, if it's the Leafs and they have three $10+ million players, they'll have to do that. Not only will they be trading players potentially like Nylander or Kadri, they'll be moving Mason Marchment and Trevor Moore and Nick Patan and those players into the lineup because they absolutely have to.
Yeah, this is going to happen. And one of the things, basically, next thing you know, Mike, we're going to have NHL teams asking players to come in on internships, right? Like, it's going to squeeze so much. Looking for a dynamic two-way center, must be able to play, must be good in the corners and play a 200-foot game. Preferably knows how to score goals, can operate well in the offensive zone. He will be required to work 82 nights a year. Oh, this is just job experience for you. Like,
I lost it off my feed, but there was I think a defenseman from the SHL signed today as a free agent. And I can't remember by who. Sorry, that's a bad job by me. But the other question was from, let's see if I could find it again.
Hopefully the intern isn't named Monica.
Bill C said he just traded Pro Corkin in his league. Well, you blew it, Bill. Okay, Scott C said, will Ryan Suzuki get drafted by the Habs and play with his brother? I believe they draft 15th. Ryan Suzuki didn't have a great under 18s. He's a good player, don't get me wrong, and he's a centerman. They're pretty good up the middle now. Not that you have to draft for need, you don't, but they really do need defensemen in the worst way. And if the big German defenseman Moritz Seider happens to be there, I think they have to go for that. And they have to stop trading defensemen, which I think maybe they've done now. And this could really help him. I don't know if he could step into the NHL right away. He did play with men this year for Mannheim in the DEL. He did win Rookie of the Year. If he were there at 15, I would take him.
Yeah, it was Emil Dusay.
That's it.
25-year-old Swede signed by Dallas. So
I expect to see a lot more of these signings out of Sweden, out of Russia. Teams are going to start loading up on these guys.
Yeah, and the thing is, like a guy, Mikhailev, I might be butchering his name. He's 24, so they can get him on a 1 year. Whoever signs him gets him on a 1 year ELC for $925 with probably limited bonuses. So they don't have to pay him a ton. And if he doesn't work out, he can go right back to the KHL. It's almost free money. So you're going to see a lot of these teams signing these players. And it's just the reality. Okay, we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.